Imagine a world where energy is a luxury item. We cannot cook at will due to the high price of the fuel. There's no way to cool or heat your house, so we will suffer from the weather. Inconsistent electricity will cause power shortages for most of the day. This is the reality of people living in Australia.
This is Pratik Madrecha. Australia's energy crisis. The main problem with Australia's energy crisis is that it has a very interconnected but unreliable energy grid. This means that a problem in one area can cause the entire energy grid in that part of the country to shut down. This has made power outages very common in Australia. This shortage of energy means that there is low supply, which pushes the price upwards, making it very expensive. Another reason for this crisis is that old coal power stations are aging and eventually being shut down, which leads to further energy shortages. Since Australia has also signed the Paris Agreement, they must reduce their greenhouse gases by 30%, which makes it another obstacle during this crisis. Energy being the most basic resource for every human makes this crisis very urgent and life-threatening. Nuclear energy. This is the form of energy that is generated from radioactive materials such as uranium. The white hat or the facts about nuclear energy are that it is very energy efficient and energy dense. This means that it can produce high amounts of energy with low resources. Another important factor is that it requires a very small area, which can be beneficial for industrial operations. Another fact is that it is very reliable, which means it can produce energy 95% of the times in a year. The blue hat or the thinking process for nuclear energy mainly concerns with the design, which should be safe while producing enough energy. It also is concerned with the employee safety and waste disposal techniques. The black hat or the drawbacks of this form of energy is that it is very dangerous to not only its employees but also the community that surrounds it. It is also a non-renewable form of energy, which makes it less viable in the long term. The biggest drawback is that it is banned in Australia, which makes it practically impossible to run this form of energy. The yellow hat or the benefits of nuclear energy is that it is highly efficient. It requires very less resources to produce a very high amount of energy. It has a high potential to solve the entire crisis on its own. The green hat or the creative side of this form of energy lies mostly in its plant design. It requires a lot of creativity and engineering to make a nuclear power plant safe and more potent than ever before. It would also be interesting to find the best location that is safe yet very affordable. Red hat or the emotion surrounding nuclear energy is mostly that of apprehension and fear. This is due to the huge catastrophes that have occurred in the past because of it. Moreover, the laws against it in Australia also make the people complacent towards pursuing it. The only form of confidence comes from France that has embraced it so well.
Hi, my name is Tanishka and I would like to introduce you to the second option, hydroelectricity. It was the largest generator of renewable energy in 2018. And although most of the benefits are underreported, it is a clean source of energy. Geographic limitations need to be considered, which might move people's attention to other sources. We must also understand that Australia is the driest inhabited continent, which doesn't receive much rainfall, and much of Australia's feasible hydro energy has already been harnessed, leading to economic saturation. While looking at the benefits, we can see that many hydro schemes, decommissioned mining pits, and water reservoir sites can provide some scope for future growth. In addition to mini hydro plants, pumped storage is a creative option that could help harness this source further. The reliance of hydroelectricity by Australians, especially people from Tasmania, is really high. Therefore, it is necessary to look for other sources, such as tidal energy. Australia has abundant wave energy resource, one which is known to have the highest technical maturity and is predictable over all time frames. More and more information about tidal energy is being gathered, and the management of marine resource needs to be looked into. The downside is that there isn't sufficient information about how this industry works, and the optimum level to harness tides is unknown. But on the bright side, Australia is home to some of the largest tides in the world, and claims that it affects marine life have been shut down. Given these facts, it has the capacity to grow and evolve to the point of significant contributions. Finally, potential investors are held back because of the lack of information, which will hopefully be resolved soon as more and more research is being done on it.
Hi Professor, my name is Toyin Kim and I'm going to talk about the solar energy. First of all, the white hat. There is an increase in solar production in Australia. The annual solar radiation falling on Australia is approximately 58 million petajoules, and which is like 10,000 times Australia's annual energy consumption. Also, accessibility of solar energy resources are greater in the northwest and center of Australia, in areas that do not have access to the national electricity grid. Next is blue hat. Technological developments and greenhouse gas emission reduction policies are expected to drive increased use of solar energy in the medium and the long term. Black hat. There is a potential health impacts that are most likely affect workers who are exposed to toxic materials and gases during production. Next is yellow hat. The reduction of greenhouse gas emission is the one benefit, and there are other benefits that accompany particular types of solar systems. For example, distributed systems, which a reduction in power being transported. The green hat. Although solar energy is more abundant in Australia than other renewable energy sources, plans for expanding solar energy in Australia generally rely on subsidies to be economically viable. Lastly, red hat. According to public polling by the Australia Institute, shows that solar is the most popular energy choice of the future, with 63% of people ranking it as their number one preferred energy choice. Biofuel energy. First is white hat. In Australia, the focus for future biofuel developments should be on sustainable, low-carbon, advanced biofuels. Blue hat. Advanced biofuels can derive energy from feedstocks that would otherwise be considered waste materials. They are also highly compatible with existing fuel infrastructure, which further increases their attractiveness for investment. Black hat. Biofuel industry is still in the early days of a biofuel industry with critical uncertainties such as energy prices, consumer preference, Australian and international government policy, and technology shifts. Yellow hat. The greenhouse gas benefits obtained from a renewable fuel such as ethanol or biodiesel are greater than the greenhouse gas benefits obtained from the use of a fossil fuel. Another benefit is the fuel security. There is potential for biofuels to have a role in achieving fuel security. The last benefit is land and water benefits. There are many parts of Australia where planting large areas of woody perennials may have significant dryland salinity and biodiversity benefits. For the green hat, the first is decarbonized electricity. Another one is hydrogen, which is an alternative energy carrier. The last one is red hat. According to the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, stated that the key finding of this report is that biofuels have useful roles to play as Australian transport fuels and can contribute to greenhouse gas mitigation and energy security.
Hello Professor, I'm Hyuna Kwak. Now I'm going to talk about wind energy. White hat. According to US Department of Energy, wind energy is one of the lowest price energy sources available today. Australia is already using the wind energy to generate electricity, and it is clean unlike fossil fuels. Blue hat. Wind energy needs to accompany batteries to store it. The wind energy is entirely weather dependent, also it needs to be done on specific type of land. Black hat. The most hated disadvantage is the noise they produce, which can be heard from long distance. Since it needs to be installed on fertile land, it takes away land meant for agricultural activities. When a lot more wind turbines are set up, the natural beauty of an area is sacrificed. And as I mentioned before, wind energy cannot be stored and should be used with other productions like a battery or solar panels. Yellow hat. It doesn't produce any negative health impacts related to air pollution. Increasing wind energy can help Australia to cut its GHG emissions. Green hat. Making the small and better designed wind turbine will help to overcome the disadvantage of wind energy. Red hat. Public polling by the Australia Institute reveals strong public support for wind power, with 84% of people ranking it within their top 3 preferred sources, and 80% of people saying that they do not consider wind turbines to have a negative impact on the landscape. Energy mix. Current Australia's energy mix is pie chart that is on the left side. Our group has come up with new energy mix. Solar energy takes the largest part of energy mix because it saves up to 20% of energy cost and is very clean source. Next is tidal energy. Since Australia has some of the largest tides in the world, it has the capacity to produce a lot of energy. Australia is already using wind energy, but since it needs other productions to keep the energy stored, we put it as 22.5% only. Hydroelectricity does not have much scope for growth, but Australians are dependent on it, so we have kept it as 5%. Moreover, the biofuel mitigate greenhouse gas emission, but the industry is in its infancy in Australia. Lastly, nuclear power is 0% because it is banned in Australia.
Budgeting. Since energy consumption in Australia is really high, it is impossible to transition from one source of energy to another overnight. It would take a country trillions of dollars to transition from one energy mix to another. Therefore, this transition would take place over an extensive period of time. The cost of this transition would not only depend on the source of energy, but also the labor cost, the geography, the resource availability, supply chain availability, ancillary industries, and other factors in that area. This makes it very difficult to accurately predict the cost of each source of energy, since they are very different in different areas and situations. The capital cost, operating cost, and raw material costs vary significantly, which lead to a different cost structure for each resource, making it difficult to compare. However, we have given average prices of these different resources to have an approximation. In reality, however, each project would have to be very unique, making its cost highly subjective to that plant.
In conclusion, we'd like to say that the Earth needs young minds to come together and make a difference. We notice that so many countries are still dependent on non-renewable and unclean sources of energy. So we put our minds together, used our creativity, and decided to revamp the idea of the energy mix into something which is more fitting to a sustainable world. Hope you enjoyed it.